All right, we are continuing to do factoring with ax squared plus bx plus c. So if you missed video 1, go back and watch the previous video to find out how to work out the examples in examples 1 and 2. All right, so now we're going to look at example 3. It says factoring ax squared plus bx plus c when a is positive and c is negative. All right, so in the last video, you remember I said multiply AC and add to get B. This is something, if you remember, it makes factoring of any of these forms easy. All right, so let's look at A part. So if we have 2x squared minus 5x minus 7, 2x squared is my A term, negative 5x is my B term, and negative 7 is C, or my constant term. All right, so the first thing you have to do, you're always going to bring down your first term and your last term. Now remember, all of these in this lesson have an A that's greater than 1. So that's why we have to do a couple more steps before we can just go straight to the factors. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my middle term. Okay, so first thing I have to do is multiply AC. Remember, A is 2, C is negative 7. So 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. All right, so I need my factors of 14. So I've got 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Now I know in order to get a negative 14, I have to have one positive and one negative number. All right, I also need to add to get B. So that's what this means up here. You have to multiply AC and it has to add to equal B. So 2 times negative 7 equals negative 14. Now I need the same two numbers to add to get negative 5. All right, so I know my larger number has to be negative. My smaller number has to be positive. All right, so this is a negative 5x. So I'm going to have a 2x and a negative 7x. All right, so if you look, 2 minus 7 equals negative 5. So all I did was rewrite the middle term as these two terms together. All right, why do I do that? Because now I have 4 terms. If I have 4 terms, I can group using parentheses and find my greatest common factor of each binomial. All right, if I look at just the first binomial, 2x squared plus 2x, I can factor out a 2x. If I factor a 2x out of the first term, I'm left with an x. And if I factor 2x out of the second term, that takes everything out, so I'm left with a placeholder of 1. Remember, 2x times whatever's here has to equal 2x. If you don't put anything here, then that 2x will disappear. So 2x times 1 equals 2x. All right, in the second binomial, I see a negative 7 in both terms. So I'm going to factor out a negative 7. I'm going to be left with an x plus 1 as well. All right, now I'm going to bring down my greatest common factor, which is my x plus 1. And then 2x and minus 7 make up my second factor. All right, very easy to check. X times 2x is 2x squared. X times negative 7 is negative 7x plus 2x. Negative 7 plus 2x is my negative 5x in the middle. 1 times negative 7 is negative 7. People do factoring in different ways, different methods, but I find that this is quick and easy and it works exactly the same way every time. If you are good at multiplication, this should be something you commit to memory very quickly. Multiply AC, add to get B. So you're going to bring down your first and last term, rewrite your middle term, and then factor from there. All right, B part, 4x squared minus 19x minus 5. All right, again, I'm going to bring down my 4x squared. I'm also going to bring down my negative 5. And now I'm going to rewrite the middle term. How am I going to do that? I'm going to multiply A times C and then figure out what adds to give me B as well. A is 4, C is negative 5, so A times C is negative 20. To multiplying to get 20, you've got 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5, and that's it. All right, so we need to add to get negative 19. I know when I multiply to get negative 20, I need opposite signs. I need one plus and one negative. I need my bigger number to have the negative sign. So negative 20 and positive 1. That multiplies to give me negative 20 and adds to give me negative 19. All right, now I'm going to bring over, remember I'm looking for negative 19x. So I'm going to have negative 20x plus 1x, and negative 20 plus 1 gives me negative 19x. Now, once again, I have 4 terms, so I'm going to group these using parentheses. I'm going to factor out my greatest common factor, and my first term is 4x. 4x out of 4x squared leaves me with x. 4x out of negative 20 leaves me negative 5. Again, you can check that using distributive property. 4x times x, 4x squared. 4x times negative 5, negative 20x. All right, then I have an x and a minus 5. So I'm going to factor out a 1. Nothing else will factor out. So I'm going to bring out my greatest common factor, x minus 5. And then I have x plus 1. There's no negative sign, so you know it's a plus. 4x plus 1 is my second term. Again, you can check it by multiplying. X times 4x, 4x squared. X times 1 is x minus 20x. X minus 20 is negative 19x. Minus 5 times 1 is negative 5. All right, let's look at one more example. So we've got 6x squared plus x minus 12. So we're going to bring down our 6x squared. We're going to bring down our negative 12. And we're going to find two numbers that multiply to give us negative 72. Because a times c, 6 times negative 12 is negative 72. And we needed to add to give us 1x. All right, so let's look at our factors of 72. All right, what are our factors of 72? So we've got 1 in 72. We know that's not 1 apart, so let's not write that down. 2 and 36 is not going to work. We've got 3 and 24, 4 and 18, 6 and 12. 7 doesn't go into it. We've got 8 and 9. All right, so there we go. These are 1 apart, which means they could give me 1x in the middle. All right, so I need to multiply to give me negative 72, which means I need 1 positive and 1 negative number. I need a positive 1, which means my bigger number has to be positive. So 9 is positive, 8 is negative. Now I need positive 1x. So how do I get positive 1x? So let's go plus 9x minus 8x. Again, I take my factors of negative 72. 9x minus 8x gives me 1x. So all I'm doing is rewriting that middle term using a times c, add to get b. All right, now I'm going to group these together. Now, 6x squared plus 9x, they have a common factor of 3 and x. So I'm going to factor out a 3. I'm going to be left with 2x. 2x plus 3x goes into 9x 3 times. Then I have negative 8x and negative 12. So I know a negative's coming out for sure. What goes into both 8 and 12? Well, that would be a 4. And negative 4 goes into negative 8x 2x times. I didn't pull out an x, so it's still there. Negative 4 times what is negative 12? Negative 4 goes into negative 12 3 times. Now, as you can see, all of these are coming up with 2 like factors. So that's now my greatest common factor. If that doesn't happen, you've done something incorrectly along the way. All right, so bring down your 2x plus 3, which is your greatest common factor at this point. And then we have 3x minus 4 comes down together. All right, so we got the 3x and the minus 4, we just pull it together. All right, 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x, plus 9x in the middle gives me that plus 1x here. And then 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. All right, now we're going to be looking at example 4, factoring ax squared plus bx plus c when a is negative. All right, so let's look at this example. Negative 4x squared minus 8x plus 5. So you'll notice that a is negative this time. That means your leading coefficient is negative. So here's a study tip. When a is negative, factor negative 1 from each term of the ax squared plus bx plus c. Then factor the resulting trinomial as in the previous examples. All right, so if we do that first, we're going to factor out a negative 1. That means I'll factor a negative out of each term. So if I factor a negative out of negative 4x squared, that becomes 4x squared. Pull a negative 1 out of negative 8x, that becomes plus 8x. And pull a negative 1 out of positive 5, that becomes negative 5. All right. Now we can just save that negative 1. That's part of the expression. You have to have that to multiply here to get what you started with, but we're just going to kind of save that for the end. So don't worry about the negative 1 anymore until the last step. So I'm just going to draw an arrow and I'm just going to bring that down here. Wherever our final step is, that negative 1 is part of that. Okay? All right, now, just like in previous examples, we're going to do a times c. A times c is negative 4 times negative 5, so negative 20. I'm going to have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, and 4 and 5. To get a negative 20, I have to have opposite signs. And to get a positive 8, I need my larger number to be positive. So positive 10 minus 2 multiplies to give me negative 20 and adds to give me positive 8. All right, just like before, I'm going to bring down my first term. Going to bring down my last term, and I'm going to rewrite this as negative 2x plus 10x. Negative 2x plus 10x equals 8x. Now I can group. My greatest common factor here is 2x. 2x out of 4x squared is 2x. 2x from negative 2x is negative 1. 10x minus 5, I can factor out a 5. Then I'm left with 2x. 5 out of negative 5 is negative 1. All right, now I'm down to my last step. I already have my negative 1 here, so I didn't forget it. My greatest common factor now is 2x minus 1. And I bring down 2x plus 5 as my second factor. And that's it. All right, we're running short on time. I want you to do B part on your own, so pause the video. Do exactly the same thing. First, factor negative 1 out of each term. Then multiply a times c, add to get b to replace your middle term. Once you have 4 factors, group them, factor out your GCF, and then rewrite it in factored form. Come back in just a moment to check your answer. All right, I hope you took time to try this on your own. Hopefully you took out the negative 1 to begin with, so it changes every sign in the trinomial here. Then you did a times c. A times c is 5. Add to get b, so negative 1 and negative 5. When you multiply to get a positive, you have to have the same sign. To get the negative 6 in the middle, they both have to be negative. All right, so rewrite the negative 6m as negative 5m and negative m. And then factor out your greatest common factors of each binomial. When you do that, you get negative 1 times m minus 1 times 5m minus 1.